Hey everybody, Trienne here. Welcome back to the Be That Create That social channels. Love having these guests that we are bringing into our podcast and our YouTube and our Facebook community. And today I have the honor to be able to be interviewing Judith, and she is going to shed some light on some things that we can do for rentals and approvals in the area that she's in. But no matter really where you're at, I think this information is really important to be getting out to people right now because we know that housing is an issue. I don't know if it is where you specifically are, but here in Michigan, we are going through some pains with that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Judith on so that she can introduce herself, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Hello. Hello.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Trienne, for the introduction. So my name is Judith Lilian. I'm a realtor based here in Toronto. I am running the Lilian Group, a group that I set up in 2021 to help with the rental process here in Toronto, but also buying and selling. I know that you mentioned that housing is a hot topic in Michigan, but I will go ahead and confirm that it is a hot topic here in Toronto, and I think pretty much in all of Canada and all of the US. So I aim to shed some light on how to get tenants into properties and also how to get great tenants for landlords.
Yeah. So I would love for you to also share with the group, how did you get into what you're doing right now? You know, we talk a lot about how leadership starts with how we lead ourselves first. So how did you get started into what you're doing now? And, where do you see that vision going for you for your future?
Absolutely. So I've been in the real estate industry for about 5 or 6 years now. I started out I've had various different positions through all of the different aspects of the industry. I started out at the very bottom, being a front desk administrator at a huge brokerage here in Toronto, to then working for a prominent real estate team in their operations, to then working with land developers and building developers to lease out entire buildings within the Toronto area, to then somewhere along the way, obtaining my own real estate license to then be able to practice within my own company.
That's awesome. And I feel like that continuous learning and adapting to what we have going on and seeing opportunities and grabbing a hold of those, it sounds like you have done that for yourself. And that's really what our leadership is all about, right? Is seeing those opportunities, grabbing onto it and taking some action.
Absolutely. And I think that having been in so many different positions, it really gives you a unique perspective to all of the mechanics behind the industry, to all of the different aspects, to all of the different perspectives, versus just starting out and being a realtor or just working within a rental management company. So it really gives a unique perspective.
So when you look back kind of on your career, what position did you really feel like you felt the most growth?
Oh, that's a good question because each position really provided a different type of growth. Some of them were more like growing pains, others were more fun. So each position really provided unique perspectives and unique growth. But I think somewhere where I really excelled was when I was working with a developer, and I was really seeing how the leasing process works and working with it every single day. In a span of about a year and a half, I leased 220 units. So
That's amazing.
so I really got to work with a lot of tenants, work with the approval process, really got to know all the details intimately.
That's awesome. Good. All right. So when you think about where you want this vision to take you, is there anything that you're working towards right now that you would like to either add to your business, or maybe what is your business focusing on next?
Absolutely. So when I was working when I was really specializing and really niche down in the rental industry here in Toronto, I really saw a need for guidance for tenants. So where to look, how to get approved, how the application process works, how to maximize your time when you're going on showings, how to find the right locations to even go and do showings in. So that was one aspect that I really saw needed improvement. And then the other aspect that I really saw needed improvement was on the landlord side as well. So how can landlords appropriately evaluate tenants? How can they pick the best tenants? How can they make if you're a corporate landlord, how can you make the leasing process easier and increase your lease out rate in a shorter amount of time so you have less turnover? How to make your process more pleasant for the people who are applying? How to make the showing process more pleasant for the people who are touring? So I really saw a need for a streamlining in both sides, and also how to make it more enjoyable, more modernized. And so that's when I set up the Lilian Group, which focuses on helping both tenants and landlords with these things.
I love that. And, kind of what we were talking about before we got started was, we're restaurant operating partners and we employ about 45, 50 people. And I would say currently 10 to 20% of those people are struggling with housing. And some of the reason that they're struggling with the housing is that they don't have their credit, they don't have the savings, they don't have, the income base or whatever. And there just isn't enough available for people in that section right now. So could you maybe give us some tips and tricks around that to help people maybe, get more approvals, or maybe what they need to work on to get to that approval process?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because that's something that I think definitely needs a conversation about, even how the rental process works. So the problem that you mentioned in Michigan, it's the same thing here in Toronto. The prices have also skyrocketed for rents in Toronto, which doesn't make things easier. And then there's also so much competition. And the reason that there's so much competition is because supply is kind of tight in Toronto right now for rental properties. Now, something that I think that most people need to note is that there's two types of landlords. There are private landlords, who are just individuals who own maybe the one rental unit or anywhere between 1 and 5 rental units. It's their own personal residential property that they've bought as an investment, and they are only working with the 1 or 2 or 3 units. So that's all the supply that they have to offer. And then that's the first type of landlord. And then the second type of landlord are the corporate landlords. The corporate landlords are buildings that are rental buildings. So they have a lot more supply because they have a lot more units that they're looking to rent. And then on top of it, they also have turnover. So they have people who are moving out. When you are applying for either of these types of units, the two things that you need are income verification and a credit score plus report. So with the income verification, I always recommend that you have a employment letter plus 3 recent pay stubs, your last 3 pay stubs. And for the credit score, to have the credit score and the report on you. I always recommend that you do your own credit score and you get your own credit report for 2 reasons. The first reason is for you to have it in hand, for you to have that information so you know where you stand. And it's also good to know. Here in Canada, Equifax will give you 1 free credit report per year. You can go on their website and you can download it directly. TransUnion, they're not free, but they're also a trusted source. You can get your credit report from there. So the first reason that I recommend you have your own credit score is that you know it. The second reason is that you have it on hand. So if you're applying to multiple places, because sometimes it does take applying to multiple places to get approved for one spot. And that way, if you have it and you provide it, each separate landlord is not checking your credit individually, because every time they check your credit, it's negatively impacting your credit score. So it's best that you check it once, and then you can make photocopies and you provide it to the applications that you are filling out. The other thing I would recommend is that you actually have all of these documents on hand before you even start looking. Again, 2 reasons for that. The first reason is the rental market is very fast. So if you look at something today and you like something today, chances are it's not on the market in 3 or 4 days from now. So if it takes you 3 or 4 days to get your employment letter from your HR department, you're probably too late and you've just done yourself a disservice. That's the first reason. The second reason is so that you know your standing. The number one rule of thumb when you are looking for a rental unit regarding price is that the price should only be about 30 to 40% of your annual income. So based on what your annual income is, the rental prices that you are looking at for you to be safe and comfortable, but also to increase your chances of approval, the rental price should only be 30 to 40% of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're combined, if you're working with, a partner or a roommate or something like that, then you combine the incomes, and then of the combined incomes, again, it should only be 30 to 40%.
Mm-hmm. I think people miss that. We were teaching a class called Bridges Getting Out of Poverty. And one of the things that was a big eye opener for some of the people that were in the class was the fact that we said, okay, what's your income? 30% of that. How many of you are spending more than 30% of your income right now on your housing? And it didn't even include like utilities and those types of, it's just like just rent or just your mortgage. And they were so surprised by that we had to actually go through and really redo a budget for them just based off of new information. They just didn't know. It's not talked about.
Absolutely. And, I understand, because it's hard with all the prices that have gone up, and also with the rental prices going crazy. I'm not sure, what they are in Michigan, but in Toronto, they're absolutely insane, the rental prices.
It's nuts.
So, yeah, so it's hard to stay within that 30 to 40% range. So definitely something to consider there.
I think a part of that, the aha was the fact that we just were having a conversation about it. I don't think enough people have conversations about where they're at, where they want to be. And, that's the type of thing that I like to bring into our community and on the YouTube and the podcast is, if I'm leading myself, where am I at right now? Where do I want to be? I obviously have this gap. How am I going to fill that in? So I think that you have given some great things for them to think about in that, and in very easy things to do. Not only Equifax and TransUnion, but we use Credit Karma as well. And yes, the numbers, and even my bank will give me a free report if I ask them to, but the numbers are off by a couple points here and there, but not enough to say that one is better than the other.
And people don't realize how important actually your credit score is, because it really is a deciding factor for many things. It's a deciding factor on whether you're going to get the rental unit you want, whether you're going to get the car loan that you want, whether you'll be approved for even a cell phone if you're doing the 2-year plans for the cell phones. So another really big piece on that is, and it's not to say that if someone has a lower score that they'd be a bad tenant. It's easy to fall into having a lower score if you're not aware of how credit works, and how to increase your score.
Yeah. So when you think about, you've obviously had a lot of success in your career, and were some of these things taught to you early, or have you learned them throughout your career growth?
Absolutely not. None of these things were taught to me ahead of time. They did not even mention this in school, not in university, not in high school, not in middle school, nowhere. It was something that I learned on the job. So I received training. Yeah, that's it.
So obviously, you look at learning as a piece of what's creating the success for you. But, we talk in the group a lot about, a morning routine, and it can be as an individual as you. However, it's important to have one. But, over the time, we've also talked about maybe you're not a morning person. So maybe it's an afternoon or an evening type of routine. But for you, what would you say is one of those non-negotiables in your day that you feel like helps you be successful in your business or as a leader?
Absolutely. Two routines that I feel increase my productivity. Number one is in the morning, having a coffee and a pastry. So whether that's a cookie or a croissant, it's like kind of a European thing.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, a must, gets my energy going. And then the next thing that is a must is winding down at the end of the day. I have trouble sleeping. I'm a very light sleeper, and my sleep is very indicative of how my next day is going to go. So if I'm not getting a good night's sleep the night before, I'm less productive in the next day. So I've really dedicated time to winding down at night. Reading books are really great. I mean, it's kind of cliche, and I don't do it always. Sometimes I'll just do Netflix. But those are, I think, really knowing what makes you productive, and then making sure that you are doing the steps necessary.
Yeah, I think as soon as we know what works for us, that's the hard part, right? I tell everybody, these things are simple. It doesn't mean they're easy. And that easy piece is the part that you have to get past. Like if you really want something, you've got to work for it. It's going to take some effort. You got to get some sweat in there, right? Well, thank you so much for being on with us today and sharing those tips. I think that that's really going to be helpful for people and what they're dealing with right now. If people wanted to follow you and know all the things, where is the best place to find you and the stuff that you're offering to people?
Absolutely. So the best place is to find me on Instagram. My handle is the Lilian Group. So Lilian, the Lilian Group. And I post content there. You can also find my email there and find my website there. Whether you're a landlord or you're a tenant in Toronto, and just message me and I'd love to help you.
I love that. And I've had you on here hot seat now for about 15 minutes. I thank you for that. I don't prepare questions ahead of time. And I always appreciate that my guests are like, I know my stuff and I know what I want to share. So I love that about you. But do you have any questions for me?
How long have you been doing this?
Oh,
I love,
gosh.
like, when I was looking into what you're doing, I love the mission. I love the community. How long has it been?
Yeah, so I kind of joke about the fact that I've been in a leadership role for about 26 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've done retail space, restaurant space, and then my own personal coaching and network marketing. So I started making things actually official in 2018. And I've been doing group and one-on-one coaching really since then. And
Mhm.
I've always had some sort of side piece of the business that I add to that because I believe that I need to keep things relevant. You know,
Mhm.
I have a team of 45. I have 3 managers that are in the restaurant. I'm able to use some of those experiences and the things that happen for us and the way that we get through them as content to help people because we're all kind of going through similar situations. So I'm super thankful for that.
Absolutely. And it's, the world is evolving and changing at such a rapid pace in these last few years that it's almost essential to be, quick on your feet, adaptable, flexible. And that's
And
not
be
easy.
in it. Yeah,
And
it's
that's
not
not an easy
easy.
thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on with us today. If you want to know more about Judith will make sure that we get the information down in the notes for you, as well as on our YouTube and in our Facebook community. And I'm sure that if you reach out and ask about some of these tips that she gave you, she would be more than an open book as well.
Mhm.
All right, guys, have a
Absolutely.
great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.